When I first started my YouTube channel, I set out on a mission. Find a way to eat the same foods I love, but make them fit into my healthy lifestyle. After buying Greg Doucette's Ultimate Anabolic Cookbook 2.0 and making nearly every recipe, I was inspired to create my own recipes. I adopted a philosophy of making the same foods that I love, but with better choices. One of those first recipes was my first version of a protein brownie, where I even impressed myself with how authentic it tasted. 3 years later, and countless recipes later, I've evolved that protein recipe. Don't get me wrong, Protein Brownie Recipe 1.0 is still amazing. However, I think this 2.0 recipe is next level. There's many desserts that have stood the test of time. Cakes, cheesecake, cookies, ice cream, pastries, donuts, all craveable, but unfortunately, they tend to be very high in calories with little to no protein. We're all about eating the same foods with better choices here, and one food that I neglected to mention there was, of course, brownies. If you're like me, and you enjoy eating brownies, but they don't fit your calories or protein goals because, let's face it, what brownies do? Well, these actually. My Protein Brownie 2.0 recipe is the best tasting protein brownie you will ever try, and they're so simple to make, you won't need to spend money on high-priced protein bars any longer. Let's make this 2.0 version right now. Here we go. First things first, we're going to put a large mixing bowl on a food scale and measure out 75 grams of all-purpose flour. Then we're going to need 75 grams of a high-quality, great-tasting chocolate whey casein blend. I'm using PE Science here. It tastes the best. It's incredible in this recipe. Next, we're going to add in a 0-calorie sweetener. I love using Swerve Granular. We're going to need 35 grams here. This is the best sweetener on the market. It bakes the best, it tastes the best, and is truly unmatched. Then we need a good tasting cocoa powder. I'm using the Hershey's version here. It tastes amazing in all my chocolate recipes. I highly recommend you use this one. We're going to need 15 grams measured out right here. Then we're going to need the one ingredient to rule them all, salt. This is going to bring out that chocolate flavor like nothing else will. 4 grams total. Anything chocolate has to include some salt or it's just not going to work in my opinion. And our last dry ingredient is not going to be baking soda, but it will be baking powder. Baking powder. We're going to need 4 grams total, topping off our dry ingredients. Now we want to whisk together all those ingredients to get them fully incorporated with one another so that all the ingredients are well dispersed amongst one another. If you don't do this part or don't mix well enough, you will have some bites of brownie that taste okay, some taste super chocolatey, and some that are extremely underwhelming. In a separate large mixing bowl, you're going to add your wet ingredients together, starting with your light butter. I'm using, I can't believe it's not butter, the light one. Measure out 42 grams of it, put it into a microwave safe container, and microwave it for about 10 to 15 seconds, and then you can add it into the mixing bowl. Next, we're going to add in some plain non-fat Greek yogurt. We're going to be adding in 150 grams. I pre-measured the exact amount here and added it to the mixing bowl, scraping it down to get every single last gram, including what ended up on the spoon. Then you want to add in 30 grams of ricotta cheese. If you don't have ricotta cheese and you don't want to buy it, you can simply add the same amount of Greek yogurt, but I find adding the ricotta provides a better texture and more authentic flavor to the brownies. I highly recommend you take this extra step with the ricotta. It will make a big difference on how your brownies taste, especially to my brownie connoisseurs out there. Then we need another baking staple, vanilla extract. Pro tip here, I highly recommend the next time you open up a new vanilla extract, you poke a hole in the center with a toothpick. This will make it much easier to measure out on a scale without going over. We're putting in 4 grams here. Next, we're going to be adding in some milk. I'm using Fairlife. It adds more protein to the recipe, but you can use almond milk or any milk you have on hand. However, I find that this Fairlife version provides the most protein for the most flavor. Highly recommend you pick this one up. We need to add in 50 grams, depending on which protein powder that you're using. Protein powders absorb a little different depending on brand. it's whey casein or if it's just casein. Experiment a little bit if you're not using the PE Science protein powder I'm using here. Add a little bit of the milk and then a little bit more after stirring until you get the texture I'm about to show you, but 50 grams should be a good starting point for most protein powders. Now we're ready to start combining our dry ingredients with our wet ingredients, which we'll do in 3 separate batches. Here you want to carefully mix in each batch without over-mixing. If you over-mix the batter, it will change the texture and the flavor and just won't bake as well. I'm mixing it easier to make the flavor come out more during the baking process, so carefully mix it in 1 batch at a time in 3 equal batches of the dry ingredients. It's going to feel like a little bit of extra work, but it's going to be worth it. So the 2 key points here on the wet ingredients, I highly recommend using ricotta cheese. As I said, it will greatly help the flavor and texture of the brownies. Second, our next ingredient, melted chocolate chips, is where a lot of the magic came from recipe 1.0 of these protein brownies. By melting the chocolate chips, it will ensure you get that chocolatey, delicious flavor with each decadent bite of your protein brownies. I experimented with several ways of improving the flavor, such as mixing the mini chocolate chips directly into the batter, but it didn't seem to bring out the chocolate flavor quite like having them melted and mixed in with the batter, which we're going to do next. Take 30 grams of your mini chocolate chips, put them into a microwave-safe container, and microwave them for about 30 seconds to 1 minute, just until they are starting to melt. Then add them into your already mixed wet ingredients, and again, mix until you think you've mixed enough, and then mix some more. This is really where we're going to get that actual brownie flavor that's going to level up these from your typical protein brownie. Still be careful mixing, but ensure that the melted chocolate chips are evenly dispersed throughout the wet ingredients. This is really where we're going to get that actual brownie flavor that's going to level these up from your typical protein brownies. It will now be tasting more like what you would expect from a homemade, actual baked brownie. Now we're ready to add the batter into our baking dish that is pre-lined with parchment paper. This is the best way to do it. I use non-stick cooking spray on the original recipe, and sometimes the bottom can overbake and the brownies aren't as moist. I highly recommend parchment paper so that there's no sticking and no overbaking. It's also easier for cleanup. It's easier for removing the cooked brownies from the baking dish. Everything is simplified by using parchment paper, so take the extra time, make the extra investment. You'll have plenty of parchment paper to make this and all my other recipes for a long time. Which, speaking of my other recipes, if you wanted to have this and all of those other delicious recipes in your pocket, I highly recommend you pick up my cookbook, a Craving Crusher cookbook. It has well over 70 plus high protein recipes, all of which are the craveable foods you love, but with better ingredient choices. Much appreciation to all those who have already purchased my cookbook, and if you haven't yet and are interested in picking it up, it's the first link in the description box down below. Now let's get back to the recipe. After you get your batter into the baking dish, you're going to shape it out as best you can into a rectangle shape with about a 1-inch thickness throughout. You don't have to be as artistic as I am being here. You can also pick any shape you want. Make it a rectangle, you can make it a triangle, you can make it a circle, whatever you like, as long as you can cut it into 8 equal pieces. I just have to make it look pretty or you wouldn't have clicked on the thumbnail like you did today. But don't stress about it too much. If it's not a perfect rectangle, no big deal. Just get it spread out with the same thickness throughout. Next, we have one more thing to do before putting this into the oven, which is to take another 30 grams of our mini chocolate chips and evenly disperse them across the top of our batter. There should be plenty of them here to cover the top, no problem. Once you're done adding them to the batter, just tap the chips down with a spoon so that they go into the batter slightly more during the baking process. And we're ready to bake in our preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius for 20 to 25 minutes, checking it along the way. Once it comes out of the oven, oh my goodness, the smell of brownie deliciousness is going to be incredible. It will be slightly inflated, but as it cools over the next 10 minutes, it's going to come back down to the actual brownie thickness. You're absolutely going to love these. They taste so authentic. In fact, why don't we take a look at what those cut up brownies look like right now? And as you can see here, magical, delicious brownies ready to eat, ready to replace your protein bars. These are the real deal. I've never had a better protein brownie than this one, and I promise you, you won't either. Better than the 1.0 version, which was already a 10 out of 10. these might be an 11 out of 10. That's how good they are. Look at that texture. Look at those chocolate chips. Perfect square brownie, perfectly tasting, going to be delicious the entire week. You can store them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. You can leave a few out on the counter if you wanted to have them at room temperature. These are going to be a great quick snack to grab on the go. However, I recommend you reheat each brownie in the microwave for 10 to 25 seconds. You won't notice any difference from just out of the oven. It's just like having a freshly baked brownie, full of chocolate brownie texture, ready to be eaten. I enjoy having these all week as a protein bar replacement. It's less expensive and more satisfying in my opinion. These are very dense. You could have one if you wanted a smaller snack, or you could have two if you wanted a little bit bigger snack. You will never have a protein bar that tastes as good as this protein brownie, especially for the macros. 124 calories with 10 grams of protein in just one brownie. These taste so moist, they are so decadent. I can't wait for you to try them. If you do, come back and let me know in the comment section how they turned out for you. And if brownies are your thing and you want to try some variety, I have several versions up on the channel that you can make as well. Cosmic brownies, peanut butter brownies. I even have an easy to make brownie batter recipe that you should watch next by clicking here if you're interested in more delicious brownie recipes. But it is getting to be about that time. I have to get up out of here, so go check out these next videos. You're gonna love them. Let me know what you think of this one in the comments section. Don't forget to like, subscribe for more protein deliciousness. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.